Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our esteemed panel for being here today. I was a U.S. attorney in 2001 and was part of the response in the anthrax attacks, and actually had an office where that powder was sent to, multiple government offices were receiving powder, which terrified that employee who opened the mail, not knowing if it was actually anthrax or if it was just powder. And I have to tell you, I thought, and I was in federal service until '07, and felt like we were moving forward. But I have to tell you, until this report came out, and until we've seen kind of the lack of adequate response to Ebola, quite frankly, I really do believe we have stepped back and that we have just moved from crisis to crisis. But I just encourage my colleagues, this is an outstanding report with 33 recommendations. It is a roadmap. It is a blueprint. And it is in part on the basis upon which Congresswoman Eshoo and I introduced 3299, the Strengthening Public Health Emergency Response Act of 2015. And I want to talk about that because I really appreciate all of these recommendations. I encourage my colleagues throughout Congress to read this book, because you as experts talk to experts around the country as well. It's not just the people on the panel. A lot of work went into this, so I commend your work. Mr. Greenwood, can you please share with us the merit that you see in returning the contracting authority to BARDA, back to BARDA, which is in my bill, and can you talk about the importance of that and what has happened and why we're not able to get, vaccines and our medical countermeasures through the pipeline as fast as we need them?
Well, thank you. Originally, the contracting authority was with BARDA, and it was changed. It was moved to, I'm going to refer to my notes here, it was moved to the an office called the Acquisitions Management Contracts and Grants Office. And the problem is that the technical experts are not there, and they are in fact at BARDA. And in fact, because of certain regulations, there's a firewall between the two, and sometimes they actually cannot speak to one another. So this is imagine how frustrating it is for a company trying to get a contract, and it's talking to folks who know a lot about contracts, but they don't know a lot about this issue about medical countermeasures. And so I think it makes all the sense in the world to eliminate that level of bureaucracy, put the contracting back at BARDA where it belongs, so that the experts in the field can talk to the experts in the company with whom they are attempting to create contracts.
Thank you. And with respect to the companies trying to get vaccines into our stockpiles, can you and Dr. Shalala please talk about the fact that we don't have a sufficient coordinating mechanism in our national strategic stockpile also identified? So we don't even have, if I'm not mistaken, the right coordination between CDC and BARDA to have the right vaccines in our stockpile. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Yes, and we made recommendations in that regard because the system is weak now and needs to be strengthened. And thank you, Congresswoman, for your leadership on this issue as well.
Thank you. Mr. Greenwood, any comments with respect to the stockpile?
It goes to the central point, which is that we are not organized as a government to effectively and quickly respond to either pandemics or bioterror, because the authorities are diffuse. They don't always talk to one another, and that is exactly why a central unified plan, a strategic plan, a central budget, and giving the authority to the Vice President makes all the sense.
And I think citizens believe and know we have these stockpiles and believe that they are adequately filled with the proper rights of the types of vaccines. Would anyone else like to comment on our national strategic stockpile? Dr. O'Toole.
I'm the chair of a National Academy Committee on the Strategic National Stockpile right now, and they have made tremendous progress in the last 20 years. The problem with the stockpile is that the new drugs that are going into it are largely biologicals, and they're very expensive, and they expire in 2 and 3 years. Mm-hmm. So there's a pipeline of new countermeasures coming in that increases inexorably the cost of the stockpile, and everybody's budget is staying flat. So the limitations on the countermeasures we have in the stockpile, first of all, are budgetary limitations. I mean, this is an expensive proposition. The stockpile already holds about $7 billion worth of stuff. But we're talking about having to cover multiple cities with these sometimes very expensive drugs and vaccines. We need a cheaper way to do it, which is why I say you're never going to be able to create a stockpile that has everything you want in it against every contingency. We have to move to a strategy of being able to quickly design and manufacture at scale what we need.
Thank you all for sounding the alarm. Appreciate your leadership. I yield back.
Thank you.